first thing I'm going to do is polish up these flat areas, and then we'll go from there. Here I got my layout fluid on there where I can see some contrast. And that way I can make sure that I'm not cutting on the edge too much. What I've done is I've taken a little bit off of here. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you. About 7/8 thousandths off of here. And what that's going to do is that's going to make it break sooner. Well, here we go. This is the Beretta EOS. It's the 22 target pistol. I guess I could throw this part in there too. That's a little kind of an important piece. Anyways, we've got our small parts here, and we're gonna put it back together. We've done a full trigger job on it and the full frog lube treatment, and go from there. First thing I'm gonna do is install the extractor. And if you remember, what we've got three pieces here in my hand. You've got the extractor itself, you've got the spring, and then within the spring there, on the end of it, is your detent. Alright. So, where was I? Sorry, I had to answer the phone. You got your detent and your spring, and then you have your extractor. Now, the way that this is going to work, you see right in here, see the flat spot? That flat spot is going, let me see, get us to focus in here. Alright, I'm trying out a new camera angle, so bear with me, guys. That flat spot has got to fit on top of the extractor. It's going to go like that right there. So, in other words, that flat spot has got to be facing inboard whenever you install this. And these pieces have been frog lubed, so they have lube on them. You want to make sure that, I mean, you don't need to coat them in oil, but you want to make sure that they've got some type of lube on it, and then wipe it down where it's not dripping wet or anything. You just want to make sure that it's like I say, with all the space age lubricants out there nowadays, you've got the lubes that, like the frog lube, that you can lubricate it, you can wipe it back off, and it's good. Old style gun oil and just, you know, regular rim oil and stuff like that you get from Walmart is really, there's no excuse for using it anymore. So anyways, you've got your notch down, and you're going to take your extractor and just push it. You're pushing that back, push it all the way in, and then you see it just snapped right into place. Very easy to do. That's got to be on top of it in there. There we go. So if you did, take out this detent here. You got your spring. And you can see the size of that spring. Basically your nut and your bolt. This over here is the right hand side of your receiver. Spring over your bolt, and it will go through there. Take your thumb and push it in, or you can just press it down on its side. You got the bolt protruding. And now you can go ahead and start it almost like a magazine release on an AR. You go ahead and just thread it down, get a few turns on it, and you can let it off of there. Now you can just tighten that by hand. Make sure you got good action, it's working. Now this takedown nut, the deal with it is it can go in and out at any time. What actually holds it on there is this little embossment on your lower. It goes up in there. So with that being said, when you install this, the groove has to go down. I want to show the pins that you're going to have to deal with here. I've got them lined out here. Starting with the sear pin. The sear pin is the pin that has the splines on it that we talked about. I'll hold it up where you can, maybe we can get it to focus in there. You see there on the side that's sticking out, it's splined. Your next pin, the longest pin of all, is the pin that is going to go right through here to hold your ejector block in. The next pin, the shortest pin, well, next to the sear pin, this pin holds your magazine ejector in. It goes down vertically. And your medium-sized pin is the trigger pin, and it goes in right through here underneath your magazine release. Your ejector block is going to fit right down in there. You should see it almost sit flush or just below. I'm going to punch this through from this side. You notice again, this is a special roll pin punch. See, it's got the little nipple on the end. Nipple. Here we go. We're in. Alrighty. Now for the trigger bar, and the spring. You get those items right there. Now, first thing you're going to do is take your trigger bar, and you look at your spring there and see how it looks right here. See if we can get, alright, you see how that goes? Now we're going to turn this. See where that fits into that notch. It'll go right there, like that right there. You're going to put that over the back of the trigger. Put that on the back of the trigger, making sure that that goes over the front of the trigger bar, and then you're going to coil it backwards. You're preloading it. Now, take trigger, run it down into its hole. What I'm going to do is just go ahead and let this go forward for now until I get the trigger pin in. Now, if you don't have the right punches, you may be better off to go this way. I'm going to go in this way. I'm just taking that trigger, lining it up. There we go. Make sure everything's lined up good, like I did not. Okay, now we'll just go ahead right into doing our magazine release. Alright, we're going to do our magazine release. There's your spring. This is actually going to be the largest of the springs left of your smaller springs. You see this, that's the next closest size to it, and I mean it's not even the ballpark, so that's what you're going to need. And of course, you will need your pin. Let me get it here. Go with three things that we need there. Zoom this in and do it. Alright. Right in there, you've got a recess that will allow you to put this spring in. There you go. Doesn't matter, you can put that spring in either way. And your magazine catch, zoom out just a hair. There we go. You've got a recess in it as well. That recess will fit over the spring, and your magazine release will go in there. What you'll do is you're going to have to push down on it to get the pin to line up. Now, the easiest thing is probably going to be to flip it over onto its top, and if you want to do that in hammer, you're going to have to get this trigger bar out of the way. So you're going to need to fold this trigger bar. Well, the spring just popped loose on it there. I'll show you how to get that back on there. Now it's not tension, now it's loose. So either way, we're going to fold that and get it out of the way. Now, I'm making this to where this is going to go down inside of my block. And I can look right. I'm trying to do it where you guys can see. That's what's getting so confusing. Let's see if I can just spin it this way. You guys might just have to know that I'm lining the holes up. It makes it exponentially more complicated to try and hold it in a way that you all can see. So anyway, there we go. Now that's flush. see down in there, down in there, that's where that pin is. You want to make sure you're not protruding up into the internal area of the gun there. You also want to make sure that you're at least flush down here. And I can go in just a hair more. And you see how hard I'm hitting it. Not very hard at all. We're in good shape there. Okay, make sure everything actuates and works properly. It does. And here's a fun one. We're going to put our sear back in. Sear's completely cleaned up as far as polished up and everything. There we go. This is the back, the rear. And you've got our sear pin. The splines are on the left. The splines are on this side. So what we're going to do, this is how this is going to go in. What I'm doing is I'm getting this lined up, and I get that pin lined up. See there, right in there. Gotta get that pinhole lined up. Now this is how we want it to go in there, from the left hand side down, this being the back, this being the left hand side. And you want to make sure that you have your splines up. Before you go hammering real hard, make sure that everything is lined up. Hit my hand. Better than the part. Hit my hand again. When I was working as an aviation mechanic, I had pretty much, and if any of you guys that I worked with are watching, you might chime in and attest to this. I had a little bit of a reputation for being just hammering away with a good sized sledge or something like that, and then just absolutely hammering the shit out of my hand. I mean, closed fist on whatever I was hammering, just had my fist closed up and just hit it with a sledge. I mean, just crush my knuckles together. And it was just one of those things to where I did it more than once. And I mean, it was absolutely hilarious every time. It hurt like hell, but it's one of those things, what else can you do but laugh? If you notice, see what I'm doing, I'm trying my best to get that thing where it is down and flush or fairly close to flush. And I'm not hitting it hard with each time, but I'm having to set those splines in there. Sear works. That's vitally important. And we're in good shape. I'm going to put a dab of wicking grade Loctite in there to make sure that can't come back out. This is 290, Loctite 290. And it doesn't take much because it wicks really, really well. All you need to do is just barely touch it, and capillary action will make that Loctite go right in through the cracks. Now the problem with it is it wicks so well that when you're doing stuff like what I just did, if you get too much, that can wick all the way through to the sear that's on the inside and end up seizing the sear to itself. Now you can defeat that lock, but still, it's you just don't want to put too much. Next, we're going to take our rear block here. It's basically our safety block. It's got a flat spot on the top of it. See how it goes. Obviously it goes there. You've got a flat spot on top there where you're with your ridge. It'll only go one way, but it just goes in there and it flushes up, and that's it on that. Just make sure it's flush. Now we'll put in our safety, where I said that this spring slipped off on it for us. What we're going to do to get it back, you'll need a scribe. Lift up your arm here, and you'll see right down here is where that little ear from that spring is. So what you need to do is get that back out of the way a little bit, and then just twist your scribe. Now it's on. Get a little focus here. Okay. Right there, it's on top of the spring now, and I'm having to hold the spring this way so it doesn't slip off again. Now, as I rotate this back, it's preloading that spring, and once it gets back far enough, the fact that it is in this channel holds that spring and everything in and on. I'm going to do this again. I actually ended up losing a little footage, so I'm going to come back and do this again. This is going to be the safety selector. We're going to put it in here. We've already got our safety selector block in here. And the parts we're going to need, there's actually 4 here. There is 2 safety parts and then the detent and spring. Now this spring may look a little different than the spring you've got. You know, just different ones for different guns. Alright, now if you look right down in here, there's actually a pair of notches there. That's where this detent is going to go. Now what you're going to do is just get that down there close. And take yourself a punch. You can see right down there is that detent and the spring hanging out. What I'm going to do is get this punch, and we want to push that detent. Well, my punch has got a little magnetism to it. Trying to hold it where you all can see, but it's about impossible to do that, because every time I try and angle it where you can see, it ends up angling it far enough that it pops out. So just know that what I'm doing here is installing that. I'm squeezing that detent down until it's recessed in the hole there, and then I'm pushing down. Now you want to have a little bit of a recess on the back side there so this can protrude through, or you'll kind of hit a wall as you push down. So by rotating that forward, you will rotate it into its two detent spots. That's them. Now, flip it over here on this side, and we'll do the other. Here are the detent and spring that's responsible for keeping the other selector side on. So what we'll do, notice I've got this rested down in the valley there. Take our spring, drop it down. This double-ended detent. And what this is going to do is slide over that. You're going to have to push this detent down to slide that over it. Started. Once you've got it started, press your detent down and slide it over it. You want to hit that detent a couple of times to make sure that it's seated in there. And now, your safety selector is locked in. So now we're going to install our sear springs, our sear assembly. So the way that's going to work is you've got your sear spring, assembly. This will go inside of there. We can drop it straight down. Make sure that it will move up and down properly. And at this point, if you want to take a little bit of lubrication of your choice, put on there, that wouldn't hurt a thing. trigger bar. You want to make sure that this trigger bar, the spring, is loading it. You're loading the spring whenever you bring this trigger bar down. The spring is right down here, and it will fit right in there. Now you've got to make sure that the sear, this notch on the sear, needs to hook into the hook on this trigger bar. So you can just slide it right down there, and then this sear spring here is going to go right there. So it's all going to fit right down on there. Give it a little wiggle, get it all set down. I've already got Loctite on here, red Loctite. I'm going to go by the German torque scale, Gudentite. Snug it a little bit. I'm going to take my dial calipers and get a measurement. 5, 4, 6. 5, 7, 5. Adjust it a little. 5, 3, 0. 5, 1, 5. Now we'll double check visually, make sure that we're lined up good, and snug it good. Once you've got your sear housing in, something that's going to be very important that you do, whenever you pull on this trigger, if your trigger bar is not really clicking, not resetting, not doing what it needs to do, if you'll reach in there and take that sear, and I'm going to take that sear and I'm going to actually push it down. So you take that sear and move it down. It's going to get that trigger bar where it needs to be. You see there now, that sear is out in front of that trigger bar, and it's going to move with it. There we go. We're going to take our slide release here, and we've got the spring for it. And if you look right here, there is a notch. Right there's a little notch. And that notch is where the ear of this spring that makes a 90-degree angle right there is going to fit. So you take spring and you want to rotate it around to where it's in that notch right there. Now, doing your best to hold that all together, what you got to do is in this recess right there, the other leg of your spring, you want it to go down into the long part of this recess here. Now, as you're pressing down, you got to make sure to try and keep that ear on the edge of your selector. Now it is tensioned and ready to be installed. Now the next part, before we install the lower, I want to make sure to hold this on, is going to be this nut. Now, it's got a groove in on one side. That groove goes down. Install that. And then your lower is going to go in, and that little cone is going to go into the groove on that disc, on that nut, and keep it in there. Let me zoom out so y'all can see here. And all the while I'm holding the slide lock on the other side, because you want to make sure that it is underneath the lower, because that's what holds it on. So now that's on there. Like that, we're going to put it in. And as that clicks in, now that's contained. Now we have, this will hold our lower together. And I am going to put just a touch of red Loctite on it. Don't need much. Just enough to keep it from being able to vibrate loose. Just going to go right into there. It's going to be screwing up into that block right there. I like to let things like that, especially when you're dealing with polymer and wood, I like to tighten them down a little and then come back and give them just a little bit more of a snug. That way things have a chance to stretch and settle. Now we've got our sear block and everything installed, and we're going to put our firing pin in next. You've got two major springs here. We're going with the smaller spring, that's our firing pin spring. It's going to slip over the back of the firing pin, just like that. Now this flat section here, that's the bottom. Remember that. Got your lower and your sear block. You're going to need to hold it here while you squeeze that in there. And if you go to push that in there and it wants to stop, it doesn't want to go in, it's hitting the spring. So take your fingers and push the spring towards the end of the firing pin. By taking that spring, and watch these two fingers, taking that spring and pushing it down over the firing pin, that will allow it to go in there. Now what you've got to do is you got to get it all the way in to where it clicks. Now the sear is holding it. See, when I pull the trigger, it will let it go. So if you want to, you can go ahead and put the safety on right now, and that'll keep you from launching that somewhere. I do recommend lubing all this area. Your next recoil spring, lube everywhere. Recoil spring. You're going to run it all the way back and lock it with that. Run it all the way back and lock it. Now we'll go ahead and throw the barrel on. Your threaded part is going to go right into here. It just all fits right together. You want to make sure that your feed ramp goes in front of the hinge of the trigger bar. It's not going to go down until you start threading this on. That click is this lock right here. If you hold that lock, it won't do that. Whenever you put this in, you want to make sure that you are seated down here properly. And we'll drop our slide. Make sure that we're seated in right there. There's not too much of a gap, and we'll be in good shape. Here, I changed the settings on that camera again so you can see a little better. Sorry. Right there, you want to make sure that that's seated down very well. Check for function. Whenever you've cocked it, you see the end of your firing pin there. Pull the trigger and it goes away. You know that's working, we'll go fire it. Test out the Beretta NEOs. So much about that sight, something doesn't seem to be too accurate there. Seems like it's got a lot of parallax. Gun shoots just fine.